Most people turn on a tap and never think about where that water comes from. They don't think about the treatment system that removed what shouldn't be there, the professionals who designed and installed the treatment equipment, or the regulation crafted to set a standard, a minimum standard to protect health and safety. They certainly didn't think about the 2 billion people worldwide who turn on a tap and get something they can't safely drink, or the countless others who don't even have taps to turn on. That gap between what most people assume and what is actually true about water is why the Drinkable podcast exists. I'm Greg Reinicke, Master Water Specialist and President of the Water Quality Association. I've spent 30 years working on water quality improvement across the United States, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. I've seen what good water does for people and what bad water costs them. In every episode of Drinkable, we close that gap. We talk to the scientists, the engineers, the regulators, the dealers, and the people doing the real work of getting safe water to the people who need it. We do not fear, we do not hype, we just do water. This is Drinkable. Hey, welcome back to Drinkable. I'm Greg Reinicke. I've been in the water business for about 30 years now, residential, commercial, industrial, all over the US, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. And I can tell you with some confidence that the biggest problems I've ever seen in this industry weren't chemistry problems. They weren't mechanical problems. They were people problems. Today I want to talk about something that most water treatment business owners think about privately but rarely say out loud. It's the friction between the people who sell and the people who actually do the work. Between the promise and the delivery. Between what the customer was told and what they actually got. It's a topic I've been sitting with for a while, and I want to get into it seriously today. Because there's a meme. I don't know, it sounds weird to open an industry podcast with a meme, but this one just nails something perfectly. There's a golden retriever sitting at a restaurant table, looking miserable, completely ignored. The label on the dog says, quote, engineering team, knowing the solution is not technically possible. At the table, smiling and chatting, are the labels for sales team, presenting the solution in PowerPoint, and excited customer. The sales team, of course, is holding the dog's muzzle closed. It's funny. It's also a complete organizational disaster, and unfortunately, I've watched that disaster play out in my own organizations and in others. In fact, in way more water treatment companies than I care to count. Here's what that meme doesn't show you. It doesn't show the installer who shows up to the job site and opens a folder full of promises that she can't fulfill with the equipment on her truck. It doesn't show the service tech dispatched 6 months later to fix a system that was never correctly specified in the first place. And it doesn't show the customer sitting across from you on a complaint call, genuinely confused about why the water coming out of their tap doesn't match what was on the proposal. That's the full picture. Sales, engineering, installation, service, they're not separate problems with separate owners. They're one continuous chain, and a weak link anywhere in that chain eventually transfers its load to the customer. And of course, in water treatment, that's somebody's drinking water, somebody's bathing water, somebody's working water in their business. In our business, we also have a variation on the theme that most industries don't face. The person who sold the job is frequently the same person who installs it, services it, and is expected to keep that customer happy for the next 15, 20 years. That's, of course, the sales technician. It is simultaneously the most economically powerful and the most ethically precarious role in the residential water quality improvement channel. When this role is managed well, it's a compounding asset. When it's managed poorly or not managed at all, it degrades customer relationships. It degrades the technician's character. It degrades your company reputation, all at the same time. So where does the hostility come from? Let me be clear about something first. Salespeople and engineering people are not fundamentally incompatible. They're trained, rewarded, and measured in ways that create guaranteed conflict, though, because sales culture is built around yes. The salesperson who wins is the one who keeps the customer excited and closes sales. Hesitation's the enemy. Complexity is something you manage on the back end. It's somebody else's problem. Engineering culture is built around constraint and contingency. You can't sell your way past a solubility limit. You can't talk your way around precipitation curves. And you can't sales commission a system into compliance. The engineer's job is to understand where the lines are and refuse to cross them. Salesperson sometimes has to find ways to bend those lines. Neither team's wrong about their own job, but they're often wrong about understanding each other's. The problem compounds because organizations separate these functions completely and then they wonder why they don't communicate. Sales is measured on closed deals. Engineering is measured on delivered performance. When a deal closes on promises that can't be delivered, both teams fail, but at different times, in different rooms, so nobody's in the same place when the failure lands. And in water treatment, the handoffs don't always stop just at sales and engineering. There are two more that almost nobody talks about. The first is the handoff from sales to installation. The installer has to make reality match what the salesperson sold. In an ideal world, the proposal was built with input from the installation team. In the real world, though, installers routinely arrive at jobs with incomplete water analyses, vague scope documentation, equipment specs, sometimes driven by margin or commission targets, all creating an environment where the installer is now sitting with a problem. Because when site conditions don't match what was assumed during the sale, the installer really has three options. 1, improvise and hope. 2, call back to the office for guidance that might not even be available. Or 3, install something that they know might create a problem downstream. All three are expensive options. The second handoff is from installation to service. The service technician often has the most complete picture of how a system performs over time. They see what fails, they see what wears prematurely, they understand what customers consistently misunderstand about their equipment. In well-run organizations, all of that information flows back up the chain. However, in so many organizations, it just sits in service tickets or in the heads of technicians who've learned, often painfully, that nobody upstream really gives a damn about their observations anyway. The service technician dispatched to fix a misspecified system isn't just solving a technical problem. He's subsidizing a sales approach that didn't account for the full cost of delivery. And that's a problem. Let's talk about the people who figured this out. This isn't a new problem. The home service trades have been wrestling with it for decades, and some of the best thinkers in that world arrived at conclusions that apply directly to how water quality improvement professionals manage their people today. I want to talk about 3 of them. The first is Frank Blau. Frank built Blau Plumbing in Milwaukee into one of the most respected residential service operations in the country. He's widely credited as the godfather of flat rate pricing for residential service work. He spent nearly 2 decades writing about it in Plumbing and Mechanical magazine, some of my favorite articles, by the way. And he traveled the country running seminars, usually at his own personal cost, just to help teach other contractors to stop undercutting themselves. His core argument wasn't complicated. It goes something like this. Price correctly, pay your people extraordinarily well, provide genuine value, and the customers who matter will keep coming back. Blau paid union wages plus spiffs. He was a consistent opponent of straight commission pay for service techs. His reasoning was simple. A technician whose income depends on closing is a technician who cannot be trusted to give an objective diagnosis. I agree with him. And the business he built, where the vast majority of revenue came from repeat customers, validated that position for decades. The second is Jim Abrams, co-founder of Plumbers Success International. Abrams and his partners built PSI in the late 90s, And the brands that grew out of that work include 1 Hour Air Conditioning and Heating, Ben Franklin, and Mr. Sparky. Abrams built his early reputation on aggressive sales systems. CSG firms, the predecessor organization, attracted real criticism for emphasizing sales over service. What's instructive here is what happened when Abrams actually took the time to reconsider his own position. Despite having helped to build some of the most commission-driven sales cultures in the residential trades, he eventually became a convert to wage-based pay. His preference was pay technicians hourly and offer additional compensation based not just on revenue, but on attitude, customer satisfaction, and the ability to retain customers. That's not the philosophy of someone who came to that conclusion easily. It's the conclusion of someone who built commission-heavy systems, watched them operate, watched them fail, and saw the fruits of their labor. The third is the Nexstar Network. Blau's peer organization eventually became Nexstar, which today serves more than 550 individual residential contractors in plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. Nexstar's flagship training is something called the service system. It's a 6-step process for in-home service calls that begins with preparation and trust building and gets to presenting options to the customer only after a thorough evaluation and a clear understanding of what the customer actually values. The sequence is deliberate. The technician who presents options before establishing what the customer values is a technician that's selling. The technician who builds rapport, diagnoses honestly, and matches findings to the customer's own stated priorities is a technician that is serving. Nexstar spent decades encoding that distinction into a repeatable process. And then there's Michael Gerber, one of my favorite authors. He wrote The E-Myth. Gerber's observation is that most small businesses are started by technicians who are excellent at their craft, but have never been taught to think like the owner of a business that actually does that work. The plumber who starts a plumbing company, the water treatment dealer who builds a dealership, most of them are prone to what Gerber calls the technician trap, spending nearly all their time doing the technical work rather than building the systems that would allow the work to be done by others, consistently, and, most importantly, without them. The owner who is the best closer in the company, who handles every difficult call personally, who cannot take a real vacation because everything depends on them, they haven't built a business. They've built themselves a job that happens to have employees and extra responsibilities. So now we get to the part that makes most owners uncomfortable, because this is where the conversation stops being about team dynamics and starts being about the structure that they built and the incentives that they're paying for. Commission pay is not inherently wrong. It does create motivation. It aligns salespeople with top-line revenue in ways that a base salary alone doesn't. The problem is when commission pay is entirely decoupled from what happens after the close. When you pay for the close and only the close, you've built a structure that systematically discounts the future. The technician who earns income at the moment of sale has a fundamentally different relationship with downstream consequences than the one who returns in 6 months to service what she sold. That's not a character flaw. It's a predictable response to how the incentive is structured. The practical results in our industry are quite specific. We end up with proposals that underspecify consumables or maintenance requirements. We end up with lowballed service requirements or equipment selected on initial cost rather than overall total cost of ownership. The customer who is told their RO system would basically take care of itself is going to be upset when the membrane replacement arrives on schedule. Or the service call cost that was never quoted as part of the conversation when they bought the reverse osmosis system. That frustration usually lands on the service tech who did nothing wrong. It lands on the company's reputation, but it rarely, if ever, goes back to the commission check that created the problem. So what does a better structure look like? Let me share a few principles that the best operators in this space have landed on. Pay people well enough that they're not closing deals out of desperation. A technician who can't cover rent without 3 sales this week is a technician whose recommendations you cannot trust to be objective. Second, critically important, commission on margin, not revenue. When you commission on revenue, a tech who drops price to close has no financial reason not to. Commission on margin means the person who protects pricing earns more per dollar of work than the one who discounts to volume. And third, tie commission to quality. Either a split or a deferred payment, a portion of what the technician earns, typically 20 to 30%, held up for 90 to 180 days past installation, contingent on no warranty callbacks attributable to sales misunderstandings or specification failures. That's not a punitive clawback, it's a deferred payment that reflects the two-phase nature of the work. Fourth, spiffs for service agreements with residual renewal bonuses. A technician who enrolls a customer in an annual service plan at the time of installation has created recurring revenue, protected system performance, and given the service team a predictable workload. That deserves recognition at enrollment and again every year that the agreement renews. That's the structure that most directly aligns the technician's interest with the long-term account value, rather than just a one-time transaction. And that's the structure that helps ensure your customers are happy. Fifth, a scorecard that measures quality alongside volume. Average ticket matters, but so does your callback rate. So does customer satisfaction scores. So does service agreement conversion. And so does the first-time fix rate. When a technician's highest commission months also show the highest callback rates and the lowest satisfaction scores, there's a pattern that you can see and address. Without a multidimensional scorecard, the high-ticket tech looks great on paper, and the high-integrity tech will eventually leave you. There's a force reshaping the home services industry right now that most water quality improvement dealers haven't fully reckoned with, and it's accelerating. Private equity firms have poured more than $25 billion into HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and adjacent home service platforms over the past 8 years. In 2023, PE accounted for about 8% of all HVAC transactions. By 2024, that share jumped to 23%. In the first half of 2025 alone, PE firms or their portfolio companies accounted to more than half of all HVAC service, merger, and acquisition deals. Apex Service Partners has made over 100 acquisitions and operates more than $1.3 billion in annual revenue across dozens of retained local brand names. Goldman Sachs paid $1.7 billion for Scylla Services. Blackstone paid $2.5 billion for Champions at more than 18 times EBITDA. The water quality improvement channel is not immune. PE consolidation in water and wastewater treatment has accelerated. The residential dealer channel is the logical next frontier, and it has been going on for the last 20 years. Understanding what PE does to these businesses, what it does well and what it does badly, is not academic, it's competitive intelligence. So let's discuss the math that drives these behaviors. The PE roll-up model is built on multiple arbitrage. A financial sponsor acquires a local operator, typically at 4 to 6 times EBITDA. The combined platform, as it absorbs more add-on acquisitions, trades at 9 to 14 times EBITDA when the sponsor exits. The spread between those two numbers is the fundamental value creation mechanism. The business doesn't need to improve. It just needs to get bigger. PE brings real operational improvements, better pricing discipline, professional dispatch and routing, shared procurement, reducing parts costs, access to capital for fleet and equipment, formalized training programs. These are all awesome. For a dealer who's been running a business from a spreadsheet and their own memory, these are all improvements that genuinely help, and for a time can be beneficial to end users too. The problems emerge from the time horizon. A PE fund typically plans to hold for 5 to 7 years before exiting. Every operating decision is made against that clock. The pressure to improve EBITDA in the near term creates incentives that are structurally in tension with the kind of long-term customer relationship that the best independent professional dealers are spending decades building. Here's the pattern that I've seen repeat. A PE-backed platform needs to demonstrate EBITDA improvement. The fastest levers are average ticket size and revenue per service call. So, technician compensation, training, and performance management all get restructured around average ticket size. Technicians get trained in sales scripts, role-playing sessions. They focus on overcoming objections. They learn pricing tiers where they present multiple options designed to make the middle option feel like the most reasonable compromise. These are all okay when they're done right, but industry research has found that customer satisfaction declined an average of 8 to 12% immediately following an acquisition of a local service company. The same research tells us that technician turnover increased 15 to 25% annually at PE-backed platforms compared to independent operators. Those two statistics are not coincidental. They're the same problem expressed in two different currencies. The technicians who had genuine relationships with long-time customers, who knew the specific systems in specific homes, those technicians invariably leave. What remains is a higher volume, lower trust operation that may look better on a 12-month EBITDA basis, but becomes worse over a longer horizon. Now, let's be honest, it's not all bad. Some PE-backed platforms have done genuine good. One of my favorites to highlight is Rightway, a Tucson-based HVAC company acquired by a PE-backed platform. They grew from $30 million to roughly $70 million in revenue. They added apprenticeship programs. They expanded their technician workforce, and they retained the founding owner's stake in operational leadership. Some PE firms report average technician pay increases of 20% in the first year post-acquisition, as the platform's purchasing power and benefits programs extend to employees who had no meaningful benefits before. When a PE acquirer takes a technically excellent but administratively chaotic operation and installs proper financial systems, proper training infrastructure, and professional management, employees and customers can benefit. The big variable isn't whether PE is involved. The variable is what the specific operator optimizes for and over what time horizon. So what does this mean for the independents out there? The consolidation of home services by financial buyers is not something we can slow down or reverse. It's just a structural feature of the competitive landscape. It's here to stay. Don't fight the trend. The response is to occupy clearly and credibly the ground that PE-backed platforms can't easily hold. That ground is trust. Trust that takes decades to build and cannot be transferred in an acquisition. It's the technician who's serviced the same customer system for 15 years, knows exactly what their water chemistry does every year, when it fluctuates, and they know what to do. It's the owner who is reachable when something goes wrong, not a outsourced, out-of-state, AI-based customer experience specialist. It's the recommendation that costs the company a sale this year because it's honest and earns the company 5 years of renewals and referrals because the customer noticed. Most PE-backed platforms keep the original company name on the truck precisely because they understand that local trust has value. What they can't replicate is the underlying human relationship that created that trust, because the system they build optimizes for something else. The independent water quality improvement professional who understands this has a defensible position that no corporate advertising budget can displace. if they're willing to make that position explicit, name it, communicate it, and run a business that actually earns it. So what does good look like? Let's put all of this together. The employees aren't the problem. Management built the structure that the employees are operating within. The fix is a management intervention. Here's what it looks like when it's working. Before any proposal goes to a customer, someone from installation has reviewed the site and confirmed that the scope is executable. If a service agreement is part of the sale, someone from service has confirmed that the requirements are realistic. Your salespeople spend time in the field with installers, not to help, but to watch, to understand, to observe, and to feel the pain. Those same salespeople need a ride along on service calls. The salesperson who has watched a service tech spend 4 hours on a system that was misspecified 2 years ago has a completely different relationship with the phrase, "Let me check with the team before I commit to us doing that." Field intelligence has a home. What installers and service techs learn about site conditions, equipment performance, customer behavior, all of that travels upstream. It's collected and it's aggregated out to each of the individual people that need to understand this. Field notes, photographs, observations, they're all recorded, categorized, and they're useful as intelligence for the entire organization. What's most important is a post-project review. When things go well, understand why. When things don't go well, trace failures to the original origin without trying to assign blame. Listen to understand. That's how you build institutional knowledge instead of institutional scar tissue. For salespeople and sales techs, the skill to develop is technical triage combined with life cycle thinking. Not just what does this customer need now, but what does this system look like for them 3 years from now? That orientation is not in conflict with earning well and being profitable. It is actually the foundation of earning consistently over time. And the WQA credentialing pathways, CWS, MWS, Certified Installer, Certified Representative, they provide this kind of structured technical foundation. The sales tech who's earned those credentials knows what questions to ask. They know when they're out of their lane, they have a professional standing, and they're willing to tell a customer the truth about what their water needs, rather than selling them what their paycheck needs. Frank Blau proved for decades in Milwaukee that you can pay people extraordinarily well, charge prices that reflect the full cost of delivering excellent work, and build a business whose customers keep coming back. Jim Abrams eventually arrived at the same conclusion about what compensation should actually reward. Nexstar encoded it into a training system used by hundreds of companies across the continent. Gerber identified the structural reason why owners struggle to implement any of it at all, because they're too busy being technicians to become managers. Your path forward requires pricing that reflects the true cost of your work, compensation that rewards the relationship, not just the transaction, and management systems that make honest behavior the path of least resistance. And, most importantly, owners willing to work on their business rather than just in them. In the water treatment business, integrity is not optional. We're making representations about what a product will remove from drinking water and how it'll perform over time. These representations land in marketing materials, proposals, installation scopes, in the minds of customers who are trusting us with their family's help. When your teams are not aligned and your compensation structures are actively rewarding that misalignment, you undermine that credibility from inside, one mishandled handoff at a time. The financial giants have the advertising budget, the call center technology, the procurement leverage, the software, and the brand ubiquity. But the independent dealer has the relationship, the local knowledge, the professional credentials, and the ability to make a promise and keep it for 15 years. That's not a small advantage. In a market where the alternative is an unknown technician arriving from a platform that's changed hands twice since the customer first called, it's an enormous advantage. Remember that dog? The dog knew something. The question is whether you've built an organization and a compensation structure that gives the dog a reason to speak before the plates hit the table. If any of this resonated with you, the full article version of today's episode is available on drinkablepodcast.com. There's additional research, further reading, and some fun links for you to read through. If you're not already connected to the WQA, I encourage you to look into that, the website, wqa.org. And if today's episode was useful, please share it with someone in the dealer channel who needs to hear it. There are a lot of good operators out there who are working hard and doing it right. Let's help them think clearly about how to do it even better. That's all for this episode of Drinkable. If today's conversation raised questions about your own water quality, the best place to start is with a WQA certified professional. Certification is not a marketing term. It means that the person sitting across from you has been tested and vetted and is held to a defined standard of knowledge and ethics. You can find a certified professional at find.wqa.org. And if you want to go deeper on the science, the regulations, or the industry, I write long form at gregknowswater.com and on Substack. Links are in the show notes. If Drinkable is useful to you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review if you're willing. It helps more people to find the show. I'm Greg Reinicke. What a great time to be in the water business.